welcome to another Tuesdays with Grace where we're talking tension issues. Today we're going to talk about loose and stacked stitch problems. So I had to do that with my hands, sorry, because stacked stitches is a little hard to say. So I need some motivation. So anyway, let's talk about what they are and how to resolve all the issues that you can have with loose stitches. Now, number one, with loose stitches, check your threading. A loose stitch is a stitch that can wiggle back and forth on top or on the bottom. So let me kind of show you as I pull up here. This is a big stitch, but it will just kind of, you take your hand and you move it back and forth. And if you can see that it's laying off to one side or the other, then it's a loose stitch. And sometimes they're a little hard to see. So make sure as you're testing and doing your test piece off to the side that you're checking the stitches, making sure that the knot is centered and aligned, and take your finger and move it back and forth. Usually if you can feel the threads on the top, there's something wrong. There's a tension issue. And if you can see that that stitch is moving from one side to the other, then it's a loose stitch. The only plus on a loose stitch is that they're easier to unpick. Other than that, you don't ever want to have them, and you don't want to have that as an issue. Most of the time, we can check and see it's a loose stitch on top because that's what our focus is on. But loose stitches on the bottom can be a huge issue, and you're not going to notice or see unless you're checking all the time. I say check every bobbin change because you can have slight little variations of tweaking the bobbin as it's filled and lessening the threads around it inside the bobbin can make little slight adjustments to your tension. So watch them and then look underneath and make sure that you always look underneath before you start quilting so that you can check the tension on top and the bottom. And I want you to notice, okay, so I was using a different colored bobbin here, and we're going to talk about that later on. And I couldn't really get my tension just right. I could always see that the top thread was pulling down through the bottom until I changed my bobbin to the same color or a color close to it. So when you're working with threads, it's okay to have a very drastic dark and light, but just make sure that you're using something comparable or a color that's comparable to it, and it'll give you much better tension. So let's discuss how we take care of loose stitches. Okay. A couple of things is the threading of it. So if you have loose stitches that are pulling down and they're really loose and like shag carpet underneath, it's this knob right here. We need to make some adjustments, and we also need to check our threading. So as you're threading, I like to, if you have a longer throat machine, do what works best for you. Use your channel locks, pull it forward, okay? Lock it into place so that you can thread it more easily. If it works better for you to push it back this direction and stand from behind and do it, if you have enough room, do it that way. But make it easy on you so that you can actually see and be aligned to notice that you're threading it wrong, and you can see how the thread is pulling down through. So you're going to work from the back, okay, and you're going to come around. Now, as I'm doing that, I told you to floss the thread to see if you could feel for any burrs or anything. So we want it to come from this little hole right here down to this tensioner. And then this is the first place that we need to floss the thread through. If you miss this, this is going to throw your tension off. So it can be caught behind and you won't even notice it because it looks like it's threaded through. So make sure that you're taking your fingers and holding them, okay? Holding the thread just like this so that you can align it so it aligns between the disc and pull it towards it. So I'm taking my bottom hand, my right hand, and I'm pulling the threads this direction. So I'm flossing it towards this little point right here. Now I'm going to thread it through this hole now this is the next one, okay? And this is where even a seasoned quilter, if you're working really, really fast and you're going through a lot of thread changes, and you just want to get the quilt done, lots of times we miss this little step because we're in such a hurry. And sometimes we won't even notice. So as you're coming down through, okay, I want you to notice that I'm doing the same thing with my hands, okay? I'm pulling the threads and I'm pulling it so it's aligned. So right there on between the disc. Lots of times we'll forget to pull it towards us so that this one is coming up underneath. And then as you pull it up underneath, you're going to feel it change. You're going to feel the tension on it change because now it's flossed between the disc. You're going to pull it up over this point on the little spring right here and then down. Okay, those are the two really important places for you to feel. Now, this is the next step I want you to try and do. Before we head down to the needle and everything, bring it up to this point right here and thread it through, and then I want you to just pull on it and tug. Now, if you feel tension, then it's threaded between the disc, okay? If you don't, if it's really, really loose, like this, and I just can pull and pull and pull and pull and pull, just like this, man, you've missed something and you need to go back and check. So this is the point that really you need to do your little check and make sure that it's pulled through, and then you can tell the difference. You can even see kind of the difference on the thread, but you can really feel it. So make sure that you're checking as you're threading, and it will save you a lot of hassle and a lot of heartache in the end because you won't have those loose stitches. Now, if it feels really, really tight, then loosen it up just a little, because we can always tighten it up as we're sewing on it. But as you're pulling on it, if it feels really, really tight, just loosen it up, okay? So it's lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. Remember those words, okay? And now we're just going to pull it through here and then take it through the needle. Remember that these are all important steps because they'll throw your tension off. And then make sure your needle is aligned, which we covered in an earlier one. Okay, now let's talk about the bobbin case. We felt our tension, it feels really good. Now I've threaded it. Okay, so on your bobbin case, if you pull it out to have really loose stitches on top, it will be really loose and it will just lay down here on it. You could just pull and pull and pull. Look, this is pretty loose, okay? I need to tighten it up just a little bit, but it stands up in my hand, so it could be okay, but I might be able to just tweak it just a little bit because it will just lay in my hand. So make sure you remember it's lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, and you'll be good to go. And remember, this is our tool of choice when we're replacing needles, when we're tightening tension screws on our bobbin case. And I'm just going to show you right here how nicely this works. You don't even have to ruin your fingernails, and we just need to turn it just slightly to the right, just a little bit, and that feels a little better, but I think I could tighten it up just a little bit more. And you know, as you work with your machine, it becomes your best friend almost. So those are loose stitches. So I'm going to just turn my machine on really quick and just show you how nice a pretty little stitch will look. And you can tell it's sewing really nice. So let's talk about stacked stitches right here. I have it in regulated precise mode. And my knots look pretty darn good and nice and even. Okay, so let's talk about stacked stitches. Now, stacked stitches are more of when you come into a point, say a point like this, and you have a little knot buildup, a buildup of thread right there in that point. That is what they call a stacked stitch. Or if you leave it in your machine in one place too long and it's sewing up and down, the needle's moving up and down, you will get a buildup of threads. say we're in manual mode. Now, I think stacked stitches have a lot to do with the mode that you're quilting in, but there are some variations with tension that can cause the problem as well. The knot can be formed improperly at the points when you're coming into a shop corner, creating it bulky and the bulky stitches. This often happens when there is no batting used. So notice that on this side I have excess batting, but on this side I haven't lined up my fabric very well. And so there's no batting between the layers right here. So if I was coming off my quilt and I didn't make sure my batting was wide enough, then that could cause stacked stitches. Then we want you to also check for the layers, and then this spring right here. This spring right here can cause stacked stitches, which later on we're going to show you how to make slight adjustments to the spring and how to make slight adjustments to the tension knob. Okay, now that I've covered what the stacked stitches could possibly be on the tension issue side of it, notice that it's the batting and the spring. Let's talk about the stitching modes and how they worked, because they can also cause stacked stitches. This is something that they don't tell you about as you're quilting, and as you're new to quilting, you won't understand what each mode does to cause the problem, and so you're probably just using the mode because you're used to it. Now, regulated precise mode, I love, because when you stop moving, the needle stops. So let me put it in regulated precise, but notice, when I stop, the needle stops. So when I come into a point, let me come over here. When I come into a point, the needle's going to stop and I'm not going to get stacked stitches. Now, if I was using manual mode or cruise mode, the needle, even if you stop, the needle is going to be moving up and down. That can cause stacked stitches if you leave it in one place too long. So I'm going to change it to cruise mode. And I'm going to just show you that if I stopped, when I came into the point, how it's just going to keep sewing and I will get stacked stitches on top of each other, okay? So just watch it. And on cruise, it has a needle speed, so a minimum speed and a maximum speed. Now you can slow it down so it's not quite, so the needle's not going to move up and down quite so fast. So play with cruise and see what you like. Now, manual's a different story. When we change it to manual mode, you are in charge of your movements and how fast, so you are the regulator. It's no longer in regulated mode, where cruise and regulated precise mode, they are regulated modes. So as I'm in manual mode, notice that the faster I move it, the larger my stitches will become. However, if I left it in one place too long or moved it really slow, I'm going to get stacked stitches, little teeny tiny stitches. So know your modes, how they work, make your adjustments. I love manual mode. It has its time and place. It's a smooth mode to try, and why wouldn't you want to try it out? I encourage you to try the different modes. And I will continue to show you more about tension issues in the videos to come. We'll see ya. Bye-bye.